What if an entire country abandoned paper money and adopted a cryptocurrency as its official currency? Not the way El Salvador did with Bitcoin. That was improvised, symbolic, and frankly, poorly planned. I'm talking about a real plan, strategic, calculated. Imagine a small country with a fragile economy but a young and connected population. Now imagine that this country decides to do something no major power has dared to attempt: convert 100% of its economy to its own cryptocurrency, sovereign, traceable, and programmable. Why? Because it would give the government almost absolute fiscal control, because it could attract billions in speculative capital, and because, if done right, it could transform that country into a digital paradise or into a dystopian nightmare. In this video, I'm going to show you how I would transform a cryptocurrency into a national currency, from blockchain design to inflation control, passing through international diplomacy, social engineering, and economic espionage. This isn't a plan for just any country, but for the right country, at the right time. It could be the most daring move of the century. You can't simply drop a cryptocurrency on top of any country and expect it to work. The first step is to choose the ideal terrain to plant this economic bomb. And here's the profile I would look for: population below 10 million inhabitants, weak or unstable local currency, high internet and smartphone penetration rate, strong presence of young people between 18 and 35 years old, a centralized government with quick decision-making power, and most importantly, widespread distrust in the traditional banking system. A good hypothetical example would be a country like Georgia, or perhaps an island with a history as a tax haven like Malta. But let's invent a fictional country to illustrate: Nova Terra. Nova Terra has 6.2 million inhabitants. Its currency has lost 70% of its value over the past 5 years, and 82% of the population has access to mobile internet. The government is authoritarian, but with strong popular support, and the local banking system is seen as corrupt and inefficient. Perfect. Now, the next step is to create the narrative, because no monetary revolution happens without a good story behind it. The government of Nova Terra won't say, "Let's use crypto because it's modern." It will say, "We are creating a sovereign digital currency to protect our people from inflation, corrupt banks, and international sanctions." This is where the power of strategy comes in. You don't sell technology, you sell sovereignty, security, and future. And while the world watches with skepticism, Nova Terra begins to build the foundation of its new currency, a national blockchain with open code but with centralized governance. The name? NovaCoin. But how do you ensure that people actually use this currency? That's when the plan starts to get interesting. Creating a national cryptocurrency is easy. The hard part is getting people to actually use it. And here's the secret: you don't convince, you obligate with elegance. The government of Nova Terra begins with a simple but powerful move. All public sector salaries are now paid exclusively in NovaCoin. Teachers, police officers, doctors, everyone now receives in crypto. Next, the government offers a brutal incentive: 5% discount on all taxes paid with NovaCoin. Result? Entrepreneurs and merchants rush to accept the new currency. But the true masterstroke comes with the total digitalization of social benefits. Unemployment assistance, pensions, scholarships, everything is now paid via official digital wallet integrated into the NovaCoin system. And to ensure adoption, the government distributes basic smartphones with the wallet pre-installed to low-income families. Free, subsidized, irrefusable. Now, what was once an experimental currency becomes the backbone of the national economy. But one detail is still missing: trust. Because no currency, digital or not, survives without trust.
And this is where the government of Novaterra does something bold. It opens the blockchain code for international audit. Yes, governance remains centralized, but the code is public. Anyone can verify transactions, coin emissions, smart contracts. This creates a powerful illusion, transparency with control. And while the people begin to adjust to the new reality, the world begins to pay attention. Speculative investors see an opportunity. Tech companies want to test solutions, and the first crypto billionaires begin to visit Novaterra. But all of this is just the beginning, because the real transformation happens when Novacoin starts to cross borders.
Novacoin already dominates Novaterra's internal economy, but to become a real currency, and not just a digital experiment, it needs to be used outside its borders. And this is where the most daring part of the plan comes in, transforming Novacoin into a currency for international trade. The government begins with its neighbors. It offers bilateral agreements with countries in similar economic situations, proposing that part of commercial transactions, especially commodities and energy, be conducted in Novacoin. In return, it offers favorable exchange rates and access to its digital infrastructure. At the same time, Novaterra creates a sovereign wealth fund backed by Novacoin, fueled by export revenues and foreign investments. This fund acts as a liquidity guarantor. If the currency falls too much, the fund buys it back. If it rises too much, it injects more into the market. But the true masterstroke comes with the creation of an international fintech hub, with total tax exemption for companies operating with Novacoin. Result? Blockchain startups, exchanges, and digital banks begin to migrate to Novaterra, transforming the country into a kind of crypto Singapore. And to reinforce the legitimacy of the currency, the government hires former IMF, World Bank, and UN officials to act as consultants and ambassadors of Novacoin. It's not about technology, it's about institutional credibility. Now, with a stable digital currency, used internally and accepted in regional transactions, Novaterra begins to attract a new type of investor: curious governments and central banks. Novacoin ceases to be merely a national currency. It becomes an alternative model to the dollar and the euro, especially for countries that want to escape Western influence. But of course, there's a price. Because the more Novacoin grows, the more it threatens the status quo. And that means someone will try to take it down. Novacoin is now a functional currency, accepted inside and outside Novaterra, with a flourishing digital ecosystem growing around it. But the more it grows, the more dangerous it becomes, not for Novaterra, but for the global financial system. And this is where the invisible war begins. First come the cyber attacks, not from random hackers, but from state-sponsored groups. Attempts to take down the blockchain, manipulate validator nodes, sabotage digital infrastructure. The government of Novaterra responds with quantum firewalls, decentralized servers, and partnerships with Israeli cybersecurity firms. Then come the sanctions. International organizations, pressured by financial powers, begin to restrict Novaterra's access to global markets. Novacoin is labeled as unstable, unreliable, potentially used for money laundering. But the government already saw this coming. Even before the official launch of Novacoin, Novaterra had already signed secret agreements with countries outside the dollar-euro axis: Russia, Iran, Venezuela, parts of Africa, all interested in an alternative to the SWIFT system, all willing to use Novacoin as a medium of exchange, discreetly. Meanwhile, international propaganda tries to paint Novaterra as an authoritarian regime using crypto to control its people. But inside the country, the narrative is different.
They're afraid because we're winning. And that narrative works. The population, now fully integrated into the digital system, begins to see NovaCoin not just as a currency, but as a symbol of resistance, an act of independence, a new kind of patriotism. And while central banks around the world try to slow the advance of NovaCoin, something unexpected happens. Citizens from other countries begin to buy NovaCoin as a form of protection against their own unstable currencies. What was supposed to be a national currency becomes a global movement. But every revolution has a limit, and the question now is, how far is Novaterra willing to go to protect its creation?
At this point, NovaCoin is no longer just a currency. It is an ideology, a system, a global experiment in real time. But every system has a breaking point. And in the case of Novaterra, that point is centralized governance. Because no matter how open the code is, how auditable the blockchain is, and how transparent the smart contracts are, final control still rests in the hands of the government. And that raises a dangerous question. What happens when the government changes? Imagine that after a turbulent election, a new president takes power, someone with different ideas, someone who sees NovaCoin not as a tool of sovereignty, but as a weapon of surveillance. He begins to use blockchain data to track dissidents, freezes the wallets of opponents, changes the parameters of coin emission to finance his own projects. Trust evaporates, investors flee, the population begins to exchange NovaCoin for international stablecoins. The currency's value plummets, and what was once a symbol of digital independence transforms into a system of totalitarian control. But what if the opposite happens? What if the system resists? What if NovaCoin evolves into a decentralized governance model with popular participation, consensus validation, and institutional protection? In that scenario, Novaterra not only survives, it becomes the first truly digital country in the world. A place where money is programmable, taxes are automatic, and corruption is nearly impossible. A model that other countries will copy or try to destroy. Because in the end, transforming a cryptocurrency into a national currency isn't just a matter of technology, it's a matter of power. And whoever controls the currency controls the future.